This week's video is brought to you by Omaze, and this one is right up my alley. Donate $10 and you are entered for the chance to win a restored 1973 International Scout II and $20,000. Be the proud owner of a vintage Scout, fully restored and customized by our friends at Bulletproof Restorations with the taxes and shipping costs included. Turn heads in this classic SUV upgraded with modern amenities and a more powerful and efficient fuel-injected engine. Score $20,000 cash to spend on whatever you like. Enjoy a signed copy of Sunday Drive, the recent album from Monroe Carell Jr. Children's Hospital at Vanderbilt supporter, Rhett. Why is this such a cool prize? I've wanted to restore a Scout for a long time, and this one is restored on the highest level. And to have $20,000 cash on top of that, I would take my wife on the vacation that she deserves. Monroe Carell Jr. Children's Hospital at Vanderbilt leads in improving the health care of individuals and communities regionally, nationally, and internationally. Your donation will support their pediatric cancer programs, research, and capital projects that will allow skilled researchers to pursue exciting discoveries in basic and clinical science, aiding their understanding of disease processes and leading to better methods of prevention, diagnosis, and treatment. To potentially win this 1973 Scout, $20,000, and support Monroe Carell Jr. Children's Hospital, a great cause, go to omaze.com/RPR. I can't decide how I feel about it. I don't know.
I like it.
If you like it, I was thinking like a light gray, like almost the color of that,
Like a whitish gray?
like a galvanized almost, but I don't know. It's probably better to be darker, especially if the kids wrap their hands on it. So.
Well, but if it's kind of a dark wood color next to it too, you don't want the poles to stick out white.
That's why I asked you.
You want to spray paint the concrete? That's not a good idea?
No.
Okay.
I'm going to have a cramped arm by this afternoon anyway after painting all this. But if you think it looks right, that's fine with me. I
I like it.
I'll put
a gray undertone.
I'll put a couple coats on it. It needs to dry. I'll put a couple coats on it.
Well, do it before it gets cold.
That's the plan. That's the plan. I got to put one coat on it. I figure this pole right here is going to get rubbed up against more than anything else. So I'll put a couple coats on it and we'll see how it looks again.
Keep an extra can on hand for when we...
Just remember the
Run
color.
into
Satin otter brown.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Cedar and I couldn't agree on the colors, that I should paint the steel beams that support the new awning on the side of the shop. Thank you. I was thinking some color of gray, but she wanted it to be a little bit darker. Together we went down and picked the paint out, and this was the color that we settled on. It's more brown than gray, but I really like it. Did I mention I'm colorblind?
If I get my math homework finished, can I work on it? Start working on it?
Yeah. Can't write it.
I know.
I got carb cleaner in that bag. I got a brand new spark plug in it. You need to check the oil more than anything. It was, it sat in one spot for 12 years under a tarp. This kid has had it for 2 years. You got it running one time. You can bring it over here and work on it, but until that grade is officially where we agreed it would be, you can watch me do wheelies on it.
Yeah?
Until that one grade has changed. You're gonna see me living my youth all over again.
Yeah, by cracking me open.
No. That's the one place I haven't gotten a concussion. I grew up riding three-wheelers. Cedar grew up riding three-wheelers. You probably need to take the tank off, the plastics off. At one time, Cedar's dad lived down in Yuma, which is right near the sand dunes, and she spent a lot of time riding three-wheelers in the 80s and the 90s. Her brothers still have the old 250Rs that they grew up riding. This is a 1984 Honda 200X. This is about all the three-wheeler that I want Rhett to have.
About a half of an inch away, and I'm going to rotate it. Straight up and down. There you go. Come closer. Come closer.
We've been talking about getting something like this that we can slowly fix up and restore, but it was all contingent upon Rhett getting one grade in one particular class where it needs to be.
Bada boom, bada bing.
He's almost got the grade where it needs to be, and I found this for just the right price. So I ran down and picked it up, and while he was at school, I sent him a picture of the four-wheeler. Of course, as soon as he gets home, he wants to start working on it, but I made it very clear to him that until I get an official report from his teacher that the grade was where it's supposed to be, that he can work on it all he wants, but he can't ride it.
Just fired.
Now, I suppose the three-wheelers are a little bit controversial, but in my opinion, if you can ride a three-wheeler, you can ride anything. The Honda three-wheelers that did not have suspension, in my opinion, are the ones that are the most dangerous. But again, this one is a 200X and it has both front and rear suspension. I had a 200X for a time. My little brother had a 350X as well. I don't want Rhett to have any more power than what this 200X can produce, at least until he learns to ride it. This will be a great inexpensive toy for us to play around with, and now that we know it runs, we'll get some new plastics and a seat for it and see if we can't get it looking like it once did. I probably should be working on other things, but I've wanted to build a cupola for the shop for quite some time. I've nearly put one on the house a couple different times, but I felt like the shop was the perfect opportunity to build this cupola and see if I can't make it look like what it looks like in my head. Now, traditionally, cupolas on top of barns were used for venting. In this case, it's simply going to be used for looks. Now, at some point in the very near future, I will also put a weather vane on top of the cupola. As I drive around our little farm community, there's dozens and dozens of old barns that have galvanized cupolas that were in fact used for venting. And of course I would love to have one of those old galvanized cupolas on the barn. And while you can still buy them, they're very expensive. But on top of that, it would be too easy. Of course, I have to build it and build it the way that I see it in my head. Most of the lumber that I'm going to use to build this cupola is 2x6s that I used for the concrete forms. It's not pressure treated, but if I do this right, it won't matter. They should never get wet. Cedar and I looked at a whole bunch of pictures online to figure out if we found something that we liked in common, and she pointed one out that I thought I could build quite easily. So we'll see how this turns out. Over the last few years as I've built things, I always ask Cedar what she thinks about the particular project that I'm working on. When it comes to aesthetics and design, she has an eye for things that oftentimes I don't. When we couldn't agree on the color to paint those beams, I finally had to trust that she recognized something that I didn't, and on top of the fact that I can be a little bit colorblind at times, I knew that she was more than likely right. Rather than building the barn over the 2 water tanks that I hoped I was going to be able to build this year, I decided to drain the new water tank and get it prepared for winter and seal up the original water tank shed. And then next year I'll build the new water tank shed that will house both of these 2,500 gallon tanks. As cheap as this little water tank shed is that I built a couple of years ago, so far it's handled the snow load without any issues. It was kind of frustrating to let 2,500 gallons of water go down the hill, but we've got plenty of water. Regularly, people ask us why we don't build some sort of a rain catchment system. If you've paid attention to the weather, we really haven't had a whole lot of significant rain over the last few months. There's an aspect to our lifestyle where I prefer to keep it as simple as I possibly can. By adding a rain catchment system to what we currently have, in my opinion, it would just be a waste of money. Our shallow well has never even come close to drying out. It's only 18 feet deep, but even in the driest months of the year, we always have an abundance of water. By putting that second water tank in place next to the first one, that just gives us a little bit more room before we run out. Our lifestyle really hasn't changed that much since we moved in up here. We probably use just as much water here as we did in town when we had a city water meter. The fact that our shallow well constantly produces water has been a tremendous blessing. Cedar is still able to do all the laundry that she needs to, and as long as the sun is shining, we have an abundance of water. Last year over winter, we had a few days where we did not have enough sun, so I had to put a converter in, which allows me to power the well using a generator. A few months back, I rewired the well, where now all you have to do is flip a switch for the generator, or flip another switch for the solar panels. Again, in an effort to keep things incredibly simple. I've tried to make everything around here simple enough that if I'm not around, if I happen to be out of town somewhere, that Cedar and the kids can figure things out. I don't want this to be so complicated that if something ever happened to me, Cedar would have to have somebody come along and figure out all these things that I have in my head. So again, Cedar and I are always talking about the different projects and things that are going on around here. So she understands what I'm doing, and if she has any thoughts, she can offer those thoughts. My grandfather was also quite colorblind. But I can remember a story of our grandfather painting the apartments that he built, and he got a deal on some paint, thinking that the paint was white. And after getting about half of the apartments painted, somebody pointed out that his white paint was in fact pink. So obviously he had to go back over the apartments and paint them again. My eyes aren't typically that bad, but there have been times when I've put on 2 different shades of blue, not knowing it. And thank goodness I've got a woman in my life that cares just enough to help me out with that stuff. So the most expensive part of this cupola is the glass. I've got about $70 tied up in 4 pieces of glass. Other than that, everything else was basically scraps that I had laying around. On top of the fact that I tried to build this out of basically scrap wood that I had laying around, I also had to build it in a way where I could break it down to get it up on top of the roof. I'm sure once this thing is completely assembled, it's probably a couple 100 pounds, if not a little bit more than that. So I had to build it in a way where I could take it up on the roof in individual pieces. The 1x12 wood that I'm using, I was supposed to use on the off-grid cabin. That was my plan. My plan was to work on the off-grid cabin, get the exterior siding finished, start working on the inside, see if I can't get it buttoned up before snow flies. Now that I've used most of the 1x12 that I would have used for the board and batten siding, I'll have to run over to the sawmill at some point. But this weekend it's supposed to drop down into the single digits, which means we'll be burning fires all day, every day. I've got to get a significant amount of firewood piled up as soon as I can. And I probably should be working on that instead of working on this little cupola. But bucking up firewood can be a little bit mundane. I've thought about making this cupola for probably a few years now. Originally, I wanted to put something like this on the house. I felt like building a cupola for the shop will be one of the many things that I'll do to make that shop unique to me. I shouldn't ever have any moisture get to that ridge cap, but even if I do, there's virtually no way that it's getting down into the shop. One of the next big projects that I've got to get done is I've got to get the wood burning stove built that I'm going to use in the shop. The garage door is still close to a month out. I may need to stretch a piece of plastic over the opening to try and keep it warm in there while I'm putting insulation, while I'm doing electrical, and while I'm framing up the walls for the bathroom and the utility room. The cupola took me about a day longer than I thought it would, which in turn caused the video to be a day later, but it turned out really cool. Unfortunately, the sun was going down and it was hard to get a whole lot of footage of it. So on this coming Sunday's video, I'll have some better footage of the cupola, and hopefully I'll have the weather vane installed as well. Don't forget to go to omaze.com/RPR to win that awesome Scout $20,000 and support a great cause in Monroe Correll Jr. Children's Hospital at Vanderbilt.